Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy flip-flop. Right, so you know the last live I made, you know what I said about Peter Mandelson, you know what I said about the King, you know what I said about becoming spellbound, right? Literally, after I made that live, like not even 3 hours after I made that live, a thing drops into my newsfeed about Donald Trump putting a coin with his face on it that's going to sell for $1,200. So I said to the king, I hashtagged him into, and I was like, see, I told you, because Donald Trump desperately wants to be King Charles. You know, he wants to rule Europe and all of that. And so it confirms everything I said about him wanting access to the British pound and the Royal Mint and the Treasury, and he wants to take over it all. Then I come to find out, apparently King Charles didn't really want Trump to come and stay. He wanted to cancel the visit when Trump came last year, and that he's put all his weight behind supporting Zelensky, and they're giving Zelensky more money, and that the Americans have decided to keep backing Zelensky, but they haven't declared war with Russia, so it's illegal. However, the person who pushed for funding in America is a Brit. And this woman has just done this incredible live where she spelled out everything, including mentioning how the British funding of World War II and the correct collaboration with America, for the funding and that. And she's basically just confirmed everything I said about the Americans and the Brits being Nazis. And that everything that, basically that letter that Zelensky wrote Vladimir Putin was a humiliation on Britain and America's part, because Zelensky basically made out that meeting in Anchorage, Alaska was a joke and was never going to be taken seriously because Trump had no powers and blah, blah, blah. So he's been a cocky little shit and basically making fun of the whole peace process. Because you have to remember the reason why they need this war in Ukraine to keep going is because that's where all the pandemics are coming out of. The laboratories with all the pandemics, and, with the DP world, right? That's where they're getting the kids from, Ukraine. Ukraine is the largest human trafficking country in Europe. And Great Britain is the gateway between Europe and America for how they traffic the kids. I know this stuff because it's human trafficking of the children, and that has been my entire life for 10 years. And the king has just taken the side of the human traffickers. The king has taken the side of the Nazis. The king is defending the Nazis. This whole thing between Trump and Britain, this woman, I've put a link in the description box, this woman's video was exceptional. She's pulling apart all Zelensky and Starmer's lies. She's obviously a very highly educated woman. She's very articulate, and she spells it out completely. And what she's saying is the reason why there is no peace deal between Russia and Ukraine is because the British don't want one. They can't have a peace deal with Russia because they've invested too much money. They've invested too much, just like in World War II. And she cited Boris Johnson, how Boris Johnson put the kibosh on. They're determined to keep this war going. They don't want peace. The British government, she said, do not want peace, and neither do the Americans. And then she mentioned Peter Mandelson. And remember I said, I really think that he was the liaison between America and Great Britain for the trafficking of children, and King Charles has just walked right into it. I don't think I can save him now. King Charles is looking like the enemy. Like this is looking really, really bad on King Charles. I mean, the war's going to come to an end. They don't have God on their side. They're never going to get a war with Russia. Every time they touch Russia, it's going to come back on them 1,000 times with karma because of stuff. Because of the people on that cocaine train, especially now that the Epstein files have opened up, and one of the witnesses has said that one of the people involved in her assault involved a little known politician, British politician, I think she said. It could be Starmer. As everything's starting to come out, he's starting to get pulled into it. Remember my blood on his hands dream. And I said that people were taking the fight to the street. Well, it's all over YouTube. If you look it up, apparently King Charles is having some sort of fallout with Donald Trump. And they're all pointing fingers in that. And then the little gimp made that letter where he basically made fun of the peace process in Anchorage, Alaska. How disgraceful is that? To be so evil that you make fun of a peace process that guarantees that children won't be sent off to certain doom at the hands of dirty, filthy pedophiles and devil worshippers. That guarantees that men won't die on the battlefield. I've tried to wake the king up. I've tried to wake him up. But he's taken the side of the people whose primary goal is to wipe out the Slavic bloodline. Their primary goal is to wipe out the Slavs and leave the Slavs for the New World, basically rewriting the Bible, and that man owns the King James Bible. He's taken the side of the people whose primary goal is to wipe out his own bloodline. You have to understand, they vaccinated the Queen with a vaccine that came from a laboratory in Ukraine funded by America, and the King has taken the side of the Nazis, which was everything the Queen was trying to avoid in those codes. I don't know what to do anymore. Lord, I don't think I can save King Charles. He's walked himself so deep into that rabbit hole now. I think the only alternative will be when Starmer and the EU and that get abolished, the monarchy's going to have to go. I don't know if I can defend the king anymore. It's getting too bad. The stuff that's starting to come out now, it's getting really bad. The Nazis are winning. Well, against the monarchy. They're not going to win against Russia. They're not going to win against Iran. They're not going to win. They're winning in destroying the monarchy is what I mean. There's nothing more I can do. I tried to tell the king. Don't think for 1 minute, though, that Trump wants peace in Russia, because he doesn't, because he was the one that sent 30,000 American troops to fight on the side of Ukraine. And he's also the one that sent the drones to bomb Chernobyl along with the help of Britain and Germany. And he's also the one who was responsible for the drones bombing the President Putin's facility. So don't think for 1 second he's not involved in this. They're pretending they're not taking side. They're pretending that they're fighting, but it's all a lie. And I don't know what to do anymore, Lord. don't know what to do anymore. I think the king has possibly sealed his fate, even if he tried to backtrack and dissolve Parliament now. I still think it's going to be too late to save him, because he's embedded, he's been drawn in to too much now. Now that the Epstein stuff is all starting to come out to the point where Trump is panicking, it's only a matter of time before everyone in British Parliament is brought up in these deposition hearings as well. Mandelson's been brought up, Starmer's been brought up, Boris Johnson's been brought up. The royals are all over it. Yeah, I have to go back to my original prediction of Charles being the last king. I don't think William's going to get to be king. I think that he's too far down the rabbit hole. You know, it's my bloody zombie dream. They tried to distance themselves from the zombie attack, but when they poked their heads up, it didn't go according to plan, and then they basically backed themselves into a corner where zombie Amber came and got them all. You can't make this up. Now the dream makes perfect sense. I was just sitting back watching the dream. I was just watching it all play out. They thought if they took it all underground, they'd be able to avoid being caught up in it all. But it's too late. And in that blood on his hands dream, Starmer was backed into a corner. And in this dream I had before I woke up, they had nowhere to run. My family in the dream, they had nowhere to run. And I think my family was symbolic of my, the British bloodline. And I think the fact that it was my sister, Amber's mum, who came up first, because technically she's the hierarchy in my family bloodline. She takes over from she's supposed to take over from our mum and our grandmother, and that for our royal mighty bloodline. And she got consumed by zombie Amber. So I think my dream was letting me know that they've dug themselves too far down. They can't escape what's coming. And I don't think I can save King Charles now. I think I have to just leave it in the hands of God now and just wait to get justice. But this woman's video, you need to watch it because she's exceptional. And she spells out exactly who's responsible for the reason why the war hasn't come to an end in Russia and Ukraine. And she puts the blame squarely on Britain and America. And mentions World War II, which is everything I said. So my investigation was 100% spot on. But they don't want this war to end because there's too much money to be made in human trafficking. Keir Starmer is mentioned in the Epstein files specifically for human trafficking. You know, like the grooming gangs inquiries and all of that. That's all them. What was happening to those kids, or where all these missing kids have gone. Remember, there were over 600 kids, immigrant kids, that went missing from the hotels. He makes too much money trafficking children. And he uses DP line to do it, a DP World, sorry, to do it, and gave them £1 billion for the privilege, £1 billion of taxpayer money. And King Charles sold a property to Zelensky that the British taxpayer funded. And he makes so much money trafficking children, it's not funny. And who does he steal first? The Russian-speaking Slavic children. The king's betrayed his own bloodline. The king has betrayed his own people. The king's betrayed his own empire. That's how it looks. That's how they're making it look. That's how history is going to see it. Over whiskey and human trafficking. That letter that Zelensky wrote to Vladimir Putin is embarrassing. That's going to go down in history as the biggest lie during wartime, during the conflict, was that Zelensky turned up, all those people turned up, all those delegates turned up to broker a peace deal that Zelensky basically said was never going to happen. So what was the point? What was the point of even having that meeting if he turned up there with no intention to sign a peace deal? Because he's making billions. He's making billions and billions and billions from stealing the money, and von der Leyen and all that. That's what Viktor Orban had exposed, that she'd helped herself to hundreds of millions. And Trump's got millions squared away, and Starmer's got millions squared away because they're all pocketing from this war. And then there's the organ harvesting. There's actual videos that I showed the king, like actual videos of victims in Ukraine being taken and having the organs harvested. And I said, this is what you're funding, this is what you're supporting, and he still does it. So either he's lost his mind, or they control his mind, or he doesn't care. And I refuse to believe that he doesn't care. But as far as his mother's concerned, as far as the Queen Elizabeth codes and that are concerned, Queen Elizabeth, the first and second, Princess Diana, Queen Victoria, have all taken the side of Russia. And when you go against the will of the dead, you seal your own fate. God, the gods, and God, and the king's own bloodline stand by Russia. So now I need to look at this differently. Now that the king has chosen a side, like cemented his decision to choose sides, the king's ancestors, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, and that will then work to solidify their defence of Russia, and it's going to come back on King Charles and the British government. They won't support him now. What they'll do is they'll support me in protecting Russia, which means the king's support from his own mother and his own bloodline will be removed, and he will fall with his parliament. Because there's I just said this in my last live, there's nothing more I can do. If I can't wake him up, like he's going to go down. He'll go down with them. And now that this has come out, this woman has done this incredible piece where she explains it all very articulately, where she blames both America and Britain, and France and Germany. It's a beautiful piece. You have to watch it. She's confirmed everything that I said when I did my Teresa Lubensky investigation. Excuse me, that America and Britain are funding the Nazis. Excuse me, I just had a coffee. America and Great Britain are funding the Nazis. They are the Nazis. And all these meetings for peace deals, like in Alaska. Sorry, I'm just trying to stop the gas from rising in my throat. All these peace deals, you know, where they've been meeting in various countries and stuff, it was all a lie. It was all a lie. They've been lying to the whole world about the purpose of these meetings. They've been lying to the entire world. They never, ever, ever had any intention of ending this war. They're not going to have a choice, though, because God's going to step it up now. I have a feeling the king's about to get very sick. Oh, God. Everything's going to flip. British taxpayers, American taxpayers, Ukrainian taxpayers, French and German taxpayers, all these taxpayers paid for these meetings where they crossed their fingers and crossed their toes and thought, please let there be peace, end this war in Ukraine and Russia, please let this time. And the only one who showed up with any honest intention and integrity was Vladimir Putin. He's been wanting to bring an end to this war since it began. And as this woman said, the British were never going to let that happen. I'm ashamed. Because they're making too much money. They're making too much money from death, from the suffering of children. They sit in their castles and their mansions and with their millions and billions in the bank, and it's all coming from the suffering of innocent soldiers on the battlefield who have been dragged out of their homes and forced to fight, including kids with special needs and Down syndrome. There's that heartbreaking photo of the Ukrainian soldiers laughing at the boy with Down syndrome who gets shot. And they're making too much money selling the pandemics, selling the organs. I showed stuff to the king of Ukrainian doctors taking the organs from soldiers on the battlefield who were wounded and not dead, taking the organs. Killing them on the battlefield to take their organs. And he doesn't care, apparently. Would he have cared? Did he care when Harry got sent to Afghanistan? What if it had have been Harry? Will it be George? Or George will get the honorary titles. It will be Louis. Louis will be the one that gets sent to war because he's the spear. Like Andrew. Andrew went and fought in the Falklands. can't believe the King's taken the side of the Nazis. It's everything that the Queen was dreading. It's everything. It's everything in those codes. I'm not going to have no family of mine be associated with Nazis, she said. Well, I tried, Your Majesty. I have spent 2 years risking my life and my freedom trying to wake your son up. I've been poisoned even as early as recently as December of last year because I tried to wake your son up. And apparently I failed, so now we have to go into defence of Russia. They're not going to touch Russia. If they touch Russia, everything that they built will be burnt to the ground by God himself. Starting with King Charles, unfortunately, because he's the head of state. He'll go down with Starmer. That's heartbreaking. The next person to touch Russia is going to feel the wrath of God and Satan combined because they were warned not to touch the Holy Land. And it shows that King Charles and his faith in God mustn't be real. Because who ignores warnings from God when he backs it up with facts and evidence and science? He mustn't want to be saved. Otherwise, they've used the direct energy weapons or something. They've brainwashed him too much. I'm hoping it's brainwashing. I really, really hope it is brainwashing. I don't know what else to say. It's devastating. I will always keep praying for a miracle. I will always pray for a miracle. But at this point, I think he's gone too far down the rabbit hole for me to be able to drag him out, which is obviously what my dream was about. God, you can't make my life up, eh? I have a dream and then like minutes, hours later, or I bring out codes. Codes get dug out and then hours, minutes later. So, yeah, so that's all I can do now. And I was right about Trump and the coins. I was right about the British and Americans being funding wars because they're Nazis. I just didn't want to be right about the king being involved. I really, really, really didn't want him being involved. I tried to save him. You know I tried to save him. I did everything I could, Lord. I did everything I could, Great Britain. I did everything I could, Commonwealth. I did everything I could, Queen Elizabeth 1 and 2, Princess Diana, Queen Victoria. But the Coke train and Tsar Nicholas, the Coke train and King George, the Coke train hit the Tuxedo Cat. Oh wait, that dream my boy had about the Coke train. I will always associate with Starmer, Muse and Macron on that train sniffing the Coke coming back from Ukraine. And then the next day, the rent boys set Starmer's life on fire, who were connected to Jeffrey Epstein and the modelling agencies. So, the king's a grown man. His will is his own. He's made his choice. So, I just have to sit back and watch the consequences of the fallout now. I just hope it's Not too late to get me and my boys out before the shit hits the fan, because I don't want to be covered in the stench. I had enough poo flung at me, thank you very much. My boys and I have had to wallow in the Shawshank Redemption sewer pipes for long enough. I've washed myself clean, I'm purified. Shit doesn't stick on me because I haven't done anything. So now what you will see is the legions of the undead. Because remember, Odin said, I've done everything I can do, sit back and let them do the rest. And he's the god of the underworld. And the underworld is where the dead are. The memory of the dead is in the underworld, but the connection to their consciousness is in the ethers. And that's God. That's between God and Odin. God, you know, the above worlds and underworld. And Odin specifically said, you've done everything you can do, sit back and let us do the rest. So now what you're going to see is Russia will become an impenetrable force, and everything thrown at them will bounce off Russia and come back on. Oh my God. Oh my God. I just had this conversation with my son yesterday. When I was talking about for his law, I was asking him about the overlords and the union in his law that he plays with his friends for his online role play. And I was talking about getting Thorgon and the dwarves to build a fortress made from the mirrors of liminal space, the mirrors of liminality, so that when the Union tried to fire their weapons at the fortress, it would suck them in and throw them into dark matter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take screenshots. Oh my God. Because my son was saying the only people that can defeat them is the ethers. And I was like, well, that's the dead. Oh my God. So you know what this means? The king's ancestors are getting ready to defend Russia by using physics that is intended to suck them all into dark matter. Oh my God. I'm going to take screenshots of the conversation I had with my son yesterday afternoon that was predicting what's just happened between Ukraine, Russia, France, Germany. Sorry, Ukraine, France, Germany, Great Britain and America. So the king's ancestors were letting me know at 2 o'clock around yesterday afternoon that they're getting ready to suck them all into, turn them into dark matter. The Queen and that are going to turn Russia into an impenetrable fortress. The reverse engineered portal from my social media. I was telling my son I call it the Archimedes bow. I'm going to take screenshots of the conversation. You're not going to believe. Oh my God. So that's what Odin was talking about. So that dream I had about Odin the other day where he pinned the badge on me, he was letting me know that I was about to have a conversation with my son in regards to King Charles, Keir Starmer, Zelensky, Mers Macron, the EU and NATO and that. that they've put everything, they've prepared. They had prepared in advance what was coming. And it's going to be their final blow. Their next move on Russia is going to be what completely undoes them. And Vladimir Putin won't have to do a thing because he's been protected by like a fortress. Bloody hell. Now that conversation with my boy makes sense. So what this means is Britain, France, Germany, Ukraine, America and the King, their fates were decided days ago. I'm going to take screenshots and put it up. You'll see exactly what I mean, but listen to this woman's video. Oh my God, I can't believe what's just happened. You're going to just... This conversation with my son, excuse me, was the ethers and the underworld. Between the conversation I had with my son and that dream I had with Odin and the zombie dream I just had about going underground and then lifting their head up and being eaten by the zombie, the king representing my sister Marion being eaten by the zombie, that's just happened. He's just been called out by his own ancestors for following the crowd, for being a sheeple, because that's what zombies mean in dreams. Following the crowd, stupidly following the crowd. Following the crowd, sealing your fate. So I'm going to go and I'm going to let you see this conversation. You're going to shit the bed. But it means that Russia is untouchable. It means that it doesn't matter what they threaten Russia with, they're not going to be able to touch them now because the king's own ancestors are surrounding Russia like an impenetrable force, and anything that they throw at Russia is going to come back on them and seal their tombs. So now the king's mother and that they've chosen, the king's chosen sides, so now the queen and his bloodline, they've chosen sides too, and they've chosen Russia. Ooh, this is getting exciting. God, I love my life. I'll show you the screenshots. You're not going to believe it. If you know the Odin dream and the blood on his hands dream and the zombie dream that I just told you about, this conversation I had with my son is going to blow your mind. And it means that King Charles's fate is now sealed. There's nothing more I can do. And he's got no support from his bloodline or God. Because he's not protecting the Holy Land. So there's nothing more I can do. The king no longer has protection. It's been removed from him. And I'm going to show you this conversation. I'll speak to you later. Ka kite. Oh my God, this is so exciting.